Was joined now on the Raleigh podcast by telephone with Barker Milford, the author of Catching the Katy, Tales of the Cowboy Mafia. Welcome. Barker, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Riley.
My first question is, what was the Cowboy Mafia, and how did it begin, and what was your role?
Riley, the Cowboy Mafia was a nickname, a group of horse guys out of Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston area. And these guys figured out that it was a lot more profitable, running dope up from Colombia and Central America than it was breeding horses and training horses. And that's pretty much
Now,
what it was.
you
in a
were
nutshell.
how involved in this? You actually wrote a book a couple of years ago called Catching the Katy. Tell me exactly what that was about and what your role was in this
Riley,
organization.
my association with the Cowboy Mafia was one of just mainly. I didn't do any of I didn't get on the water. I stayed on the land. I was responsible for running marijuana up and down the highways. I didn't have a lot of. Now I wasn't the only one doing it. Now you got to figure, I was 19 years old when I was involved with these cats, and they were good guys. They were just trying to make a living. It was no big deal to them. They were kind of a ragtag group. They didn't have their shit together. But we did. My end of it, we tried to do our job and do it, and I think we did a pretty good job at it. For what it's worth. But that was my association, and I became associated with mutual friends. And, you know how you get involved with somebody here, and this guy knows this guy, and this guy knows another guy, and this girl knows. I had some people that worked with me. That I had an exotic dancer that I was actually dating at the time. She was helping. And I had some friends. We did a lot. We did a lot of running. We delivered a lot of drugs across the state of Texas.
When you got involved with these guys, uh, I'm sure it was by chance that you met someone that met someone that did that. Who was the guy, who was involved, and who was the leader
Riley,
of all this?
The leader of this group of smugglers, if you will, was a man named Charles Muscles Foster, and he lived in Dallas. He was from Dallas. He worked for Mr. Rex as a horse guy, and he was a hell of a horse. He was a horse called Cutter Bill Cutter horse, and he was good. And exactly how they got involved with smuggling the marijuana up on the boats, I'm not sure how they got in that business, but there was 3 different boats there in that they smuggled. 40, 50 tons of marijuana up at one time, and was the biggest marijuana bust at that in that day. We're talking about 1978. This was a huge marijuana bust, and it was operating out of a Thompson Seafood down in High Island, Texas, and around Port Arthur. I think actually Port Arthur was where they came aboard came aboard the boats down there, and they were all busted. I wasn't involved in the bust or anything. I wasn't around for that, fortunately. And but that's that. He was the guy that
Were
was
these
running the
guys
show.
involved in any way with the mafia actually, or was that sort of just a name that they had, or what are the origins of the name Cowboy Mafia? How did that come about?
Well, me and another guy. Now this is my story in my book. I don't know how. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that's going to disagree with my explanation, and I'm sure they don't agree with it in my book. But me and another guy was making a drop in San Augustine, up around San Augustine, Texas, one night late, and we walked in. The people that we was taking the marijuana to were actually friends of the cowboys down the line somewhere. I don't know if they were horse people or who they were, but they were some partying people, and we walk into this little duplex, this apartment duplex, and at that time I was kind of the way I dressed, the kind of way I looked, and I was a little short feller, and just kind of skinny, and I kind of looked like a young Al Pacino. And my guy that was with me, he was my buddy, and he was a big old Italian guy, and he looked kind of like meat from Porky's. He was that big. He was a big old boy. And when we walked in, one of the guys said he was sitting there sniffing some cocaine in the kitchen. He looked down the hall and he asked, he said, "Is that the Cowboys?" And another guy looked up and he goes, "No, man, it looks like the Mafia." So we walked on in there, and the little girl in the living or sitting there, and she was sitting there on the couch, and she goes, "Well," she said, "it's the Cowboy Mafia," and that's where I first heard it, and I don't know if that's where it came from. I don't know. That's the first time I heard it, but now I'm sure that there's people that disagree. But now, when they started the trial in Dallas, I mean they actually had the trial down in Beaumont. But when they started, and Rudy Giuliani and them wanted to have that trial up in New York at the time, up in New Jersey or New York area, but they shot it down. The Fed shot it down. But anyway, they when I started that trial, this Cowboy Mafia thing came out, and they started calling it the Cowboy Mafia. But you know what? It don't make a pint of piss where it come from. And it happened, and it was there.